What up, everyone? Basketball fans across the world, across the country. Welcome back to Just a Minute. I'm your HoopSeen host, Austin Smith, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, the editor-in-chief here at HoopSeen.com. He is Justin Young. JY, we're back for another episode today, brother, and we've got some stuff to talk about, man. A big-time event for you out west. But first off, we always got to ask, man on the West Coast, how you feeling today, brother?
Great. Happy holidays to you, Austin. It's that time
sir.
of season. That means there's tons of presents under the basketball tree. It seems like no matter where you go in the country, there's great basketball to be found. So, man, if you're not happy this time of year, man, you need to recheck yourself for your passion for this game, man. A lot going on, and man, love to be here with you talking about it.
Yes, sir. Plenty of basketball for sure. The holiday seasons are always fun simply because you get a bunch of these tournament and big event style matchups where you get to see the best of the best play. And I've told people all the time, the pretty cool part about it too is that you don't get to dodge smoke. So for a lot of these teams and a lot of these ball clubs, it's an easy way to kind of prepare you for that postseason, that January run where you start playing region games, depending on what state you live in, and the matchups start getting intense and you get into the playoffs. So it's a great little benchmark during this time of the year for sure.
I think you learn a ton about guys who are primed for March Madness in December in high school hoops, because to your point, it is not duck hunting season. Okay. You can't hide away from the great matchups. And to me, like, some of the best games I've ever seen in my career happen in the month of December. And man, we've got some more to talk about after the HoopHall West out here in Phoenix. We had some unbelievable matchups and so many things that I think unveiled themselves as things that we'll see transpire at the collegiate and even beyond that. So you're right. This is it, man. This is the time of year where you learn about the DNA of a competitor.
All day long. JY, let's go ahead and get to it, man. Let's talk about HoopHall West. And for those of you who don't know, the HoopHall Classic is really, I'm going to be honest here, man, it's one of my favorite events to watch during the holiday season on ESPN. And they broke it up into different categories based by region this year, JY. And usually they do it in Springfield, Massachusetts, a big event, tons of players, big-time guys who you've seen on the TV screens countless number of times have played in this event. But this time they broke it up, and JY was out in Phoenix for HoopHall West. So let's get right to it, JY. Initially, what are your first thoughts about the entire event overall?
Well, like I said, to me, it's a matchups, right? This is the peak apples to apples. And so it's a chance for us to see really the best against the best. And anytime you've got the programs like Montverde Academy and Oak Hill Academy and AZ Compass Prep, and then you've got a lot of the top high school teams like Duncanville High School, and you've got DeMatha Catholic coming out. You've got our own Pace Academy from Atlanta coming out. And then on top of that, what the regional events have done a great job with is getting the high school, the local programs. And so for here in Arizona, you've got St. Mary's and you've got Brophy and Sunny Slope and Perry. And then you mix in Sierra Canyon with Bronny James and that crew playing over there at the Footprint Center. So to me, it's a great balance of I think every school, everyone likes to talk about like, oh, well, they recruit. Everybody does, man. Like, I don't really get too caught up in all that kind of stuff, but it really is a powerhouse, a basketball factory against the schools that you find out in the suburbs where, kids that also work at, Kroger in the summertime bagging groceries are also hooping. So like, it's a nice balance of competition, but ultimately you throw the ball up and all that stuff gets thrown out and you ultimately find out who's more competitive. And we had some matchups that really tested that theory to the limits for sure.
All right, my brother. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's start from the top. Talk to us about the best win from the event, JY.
Man, there was a lot to go through. There were some matchups that I think we're all excited about. But to me, the matchup that if you didn't have circled in Sharpie, it was the Duncanville out of Texas against Montverde Academy. And to me, that was the game that I was most excited to see. I'd heard so much about Duncanville. It was so good that even my guy, Jimmy Hicks from Texas, came out from Recruit Cheat Sheet came out. So if he was in the building from Texas, I knew it was going to be really good. And it was. And really, Montverde is just Montverde. They're in a different category physically. They roll out guys that are just substantially bigger and taller and stronger than a lot of players. We know Kevin Boyle's program out of Central Florida is always a top 2 team in the country year in and year out. And they had a chance to really continue that narrative of them being one of the preeminent programs. Well, here you have Duncanville, who's been on a roll this season, and they're super stacked. But Montverde came out of the gate. They were up 21-7 after the first quarter, and you saw it because they've got our guy, Big Vince, who's going to USC with Andy Enfield watching them. They've got Malik Renault going to Florida, going out. You got big Derek Queen, you got KJ Evans, both those guys coming off the bench. Darius Whitehead, and their roster is chock full of top 50 players. Duncanville, however, is no slouch. And out of Texas, they've got, our guy Anthony Black, who we know and have proclaimed about so much with them. Ron Holland, who we'll talk a little bit more. But ultimately, what it came down to was really the role players. You'll have to forgive me. I got to pull up my notes because there's so much to talk about from this game. I don't want to leave it out. But ultimately, what it came down to was a buzzer beater by Eric Dimings, who I thought was, to me, the most important breakout guy of the day, of the whole event, really. Junior, defensively, he locked down Jalen Hood-Schifino, but it was his three-pointer at the buzzer that gave Duncanville the win. And to me, that was the most significant and important win, because here you have the public school. And listen to who they've beaten, okay? That's why I got to pull up my notes. This is who Duncanville's beaten. They've beaten Wheeler out of Georgia. They've beaten Corona Centennial, who I absolutely love, Sierra Canyon, now Montverde. They've done all this before really like Christmas.
Right.
Okay. Right. Like that's a resume that you got to go, oh, okay, these guys, this isn't a fluke. This isn't a one-time thing. This is something that you've got to pay attention to. And I was talking to my buddy, Ronnie Flores, who runs the top 25 poll for Ball is Life. And he's like, man, you got to make an argument for them to be number one. I haven't checked Ronnie's poll. I probably should have done that before we recorded, but I think they made a good resume to challenge AZ Compass Prep for that very top spot based on their resume alone, because AZ Compass did lose to, I think it was McKinney or Richardson, one of the two, beginning of the season. So that's something to take notice, but it was Eric Dimings, who I thought was tremendous. Ashton Hardaway, Penny Hardaway's son, also played a key role with three-point shooting. But Montverde's size, and if we saw a recipe from this, how do you beat size? How do you go after it?
Listen, Jay, if I'm a coach and I've got to beat size, I need to have some elite three-point shooters, maybe, try to get some guys in foul trouble. But initially, if you don't have the size to match up to it, most teams get intimidated early on. But if I'm a coach, man, I'm pulling out a couple shooting machines and everybody's going to make 500 shots.
Well, that was it. That was it. They couldn't score at the rim. They couldn't attack the basket. As much as they tried and as good as they are, Anthony Black is tremendous getting to the rim. Ron Holland, who I've absolutely fallen in love with after watching him out here, couldn't really – he got to the rim, had a hard time finishing because of that size. So what do? You push that offense out to the perimeter, and that's exactly where they won, was in that three-point shooting. I thought that was a difference maker. 67-66 was the final there. Tremendous game. If you can find a replay, go watch it. It's worth your time. What a comeback by Duncanville. There was some major resolve from these guys from DFW. And if you know anything about high school basketball, there's a different kind of pride in the state of Texas. And trust me, this is a win that you're going to be talking about for a while. Again, let me go back to the notes, because I think this is important to really go through. For Montverde, this is the first time the Eagles have had two losses before January 1st of the season since 2011-2012 season, so a decade. Okay. This loss was also the first to a traditional public school since 2018, when Admiral Farragut out of Florida beat Montverde as well. So to give you a context of the sheer power that Montverde has and the significance of this win for Duncanville, to me, when you look at the historical value of this victory for Duncanville, it puts into perspective on what a monumental victory this was for the Panthers. By the way, fun fact, if you're listening at home, I went to South Grand Prairie High School in Texas, and Duncanville was our arch rival when I went to school. And so for me to see Duncanville win, I'm going to be totally honest. I'm going to put my biases out there. I hated playing Duncanville. You know who I matched up with at Duncanville High? Greg Ostertag. Do you remember Greg Ostertag that played for the Jazz?
I've heard. I vaguely do remember that name.
Let me tell you, that dude was a hoss. He was at high school. He was probably like 7 feet, probably 250. And he had the sharpest elbows of any human being I've ever played against in my life. So when I played him, I hated to see them win, but in a weird way, I was like, man, this is kind of cool to see the team that I used to get bloody noses from getting the biggest win of the high school season on here at the HoopHall. So I had some a little PTSD over the weekend from Greg Ostertag.
Well, a big win for Duncanville for sure. I was watching that game too, JY. And when he caught the ball, initially, even before that, I said Duncanville's going to win it with a three. Yeah. And I was going to tweet and say they're about to win. But then, I didn't want to see him wrong, man. But I was like, I knew he was going to hit it. And sure enough, he did. Yeah. And a big win for Duncanville. I mean, you talk about knocking off Montverde. I mean, you're knocking off perennial powerhouse when you're talking about high school basketball.
Eric Dimings' defense on Jalen Hood-Schifino was elite.
Yeah.
Like elite. He held Jalen scoreless. There's forced 5 turnovers. I thought that's, to me, was Eric Dimings. I know this is a category that we're going to talk about. Like, he, to me, was the biggest blow-up guy. He had offers from Texas, Rio Grande Valley, okay, and Morgan State. And those guys got in early. But you know who Eric Dimings reminded me of, to be quite honest with you? Who did we talk about nonstop over the summer for 3D Empire in the backcourt? Not Anthony Black.
The guard. Oh my gosh, you're getting the guards going to
Cam Embry.
Yeah, can't remember. Yeah, that's what they're going to Oral Roberts.
That's the kind of guard Eric Dimings is.
Man.
He's that killer. He's that killer. And in fact, so much so that I was mentioning Jim Hicks. Jim Hicks has Cam Embry ranked the number 2 overall player in the city of Houston, which is a massive honor. Right. I think Eric Dimings has that same sort of value at the collegiate level as a prospect. So for me, like, there was a parallel there as a guy hits big shots, unafraid of the moment, who will absolutely guard people. I thought Eric Dimings took total advantage of a stage with all eyes watching him, to get a guy like you, right, who has no attachment to either team in Atlanta, Georgia, to watch a stream on a weeknight. Like, to me, like, that's how important that kind of game is.
So let me ask you this, and I want you to talk about this for a second, JY, because it kind of gives some significance to what we always talk about here about being ready when the moment comes. Like, everybody wants to get the recruitment and get all this stuff going. Eric sees the moment, right? And when you talk about a player doing so and how one moment can probably change the trajectory of recruitment, why is that so valuable for players not to worry about rankings, not to worry about a lot of the other factors that aren't on the floor? Why is it so important for players just to make sure that they're ready when an opportunity like this comes?
Because you never know when it comes. You know what I mean? Like you have to create your own luck.
Yeah.
You have to create your own opportunity. I mean, I think that's a life lesson, whether in sport or business or life or whatever the case may be, right? Like, if you're doing everything that you're supposed to do all the time, then when the moment happens, it happens and you're ready, right? Like, you're not caught off guard. You're not overwhelmed by the spotlight. You're not kind of overthinking the process. You're just kind of in this zone to be ready. And I think that's what the great programs have. Now, is Montverde going to bounce back and smash people probably this weekend, or, maybe go win the City of Palms title because they got pissed off because they lost? Yeah, probably. And so that's why you have to be ready all the time, whether you're a player being recruited or whether you're a team that's chasing the national championship. If you stay the course, losses are going to happen. That's just part of the game that we play in life. And so I think if you stay ready, you're all ready. And those things kind of happen. And again, when you create your own luck will find you. Yeah. Whether it's luck or not, I don't know, but opportunity will find you is what I should have said.
Absolutely, man. Well, look, man, congrats. That was like fortune cookie wisdom right there. Hey, look, I knew you about to say that. Like, you was feeling that one. Okay.
Yeah, like the sensei is smoking.
some good wisdom, bro. Some really good wisdom. Well, again,
I need more gray hair in my beard to have such wisdom. Maybe, I don't know.
Hey, man,
it's in there. I know, it's in there. Trust me, my kids remind me all the time.
If you see JY, just say JY. Just do that when you see him next time.
It's in there.
Again, like you mentioned, though, I mean, a big game for Eric Dimings, and you talk about his recruitment going to blow up. He had offers from Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and Morgan State, and interest from Oakland. So where do you kind of see him getting more interest from, if you could pinpoint that at all, Jay? Do you have any schools in mind that maybe taking a look at?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of schools there watching. There are a lot of the West Coast programs were out here. Like you said, there are a lot of teams watching. Certainly the news kind of got out there. He was trending all over the place on social media. So we'll see what happens. I mean, listen, Duncanville's no, sleeper program. Everybody's going to see them. I think every school that's a mid-major school, everybody. I mean, it just depends. He's got to be consistent. How do you stack up those good days? And so to me, like, I think the recipe, all the ingredients are there in the recipe. You play at a great program, you play a competitive schedule, you're going to be a state championship contender in the state of Texas. You've got to win against Montverde. So all those pieces on the resume will put you in a good position, and we'll see how he follows it up. And I think that's the key now, is to see who comes in line. And they went right up to Utah right after that, and they played up in Salt Lake in a really good event right after this. So more eyes were up there, seeing him in the West. So, we'll see what happens of the ripple effect of this kind of deal.
Sounds good, my brother. All right, let's keep rolling.
If you don't offer him, you're probably going to lose to him in the tournament. How about that?
Hey, bracket busters. We do a great job of predicting that on here. We let you know who you.
Oh my gosh, do we ever? I actually got a text today from an NBA guy, and they were like, "Man, I was doing some research, and you were right." And I was like, "Who was I right about?" And they were like, "Oh, Devin Carter, who played, at our events, who was the MVP of Bob Gibbons. He's killing it at South Carolina. I put him in our top 50, like 150 spots higher than anybody else in the country." And I mean, how many times? If you ever read HoopSeen, like Devin Carter was freaking legit. He'll be one of our 100, maybe 50, maybe 40 best players ever played on our stage. So yeah, we do it all the time. I'm just patting myself on the back over here. Sorry, whatever.
Man,
I'm not
kudos
sorry.
to you, brother.
I'm not
Kudos
sorry.
to you. All right, so let's keep going. Best team, JY, right? Obviously, we know that game was really good between Montverde and Duncanville, but who was the best overall team that just had the best?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a broken record every time we record a show, but AZ Compass Prep, I mean, that's where they're at. To me, they still, they lost in Texas. And so I think that will push them forward. But here's the thing, man, the way those guys guard is ridiculous. And they just, like, our Mike Eddy, my business partner, and he came out, we had some things that we're working on out here in Phoenix, and we were watching them on the very first day. And Mike just leans over, he goes, "Man, they've got dudes." And I was like, that's just like the perfect way to describe that team. They do. They just have dudes. That's what they are. They're deep. Their second rotation of players can be a contender and maybe a top 25, top 30 team in the country. And they do. They just have dudes. And the way they guard is just a different level of defense. I mean, we're seeing, Dylan Andrews, I thought was awesome going to UCLA. I thought Lamar Washington, who will make a decision, I think, by the end of the year. I really like Texas Tech in that race for him. You've got Kylan Boswell. You got Chance Westry, who's going to Auburn. So you got so many guys there in the backcourt. You got Makai Mason, who's going to Rice, who's an absolute steal for the Owls. Now, I'm probably forgetting somebody off the top of my head. But they have so many guys, but the way they guard, to me, is what makes them the most impressive team. I'd love to see that collision course for them to play Montverde. They did it 3 times last year. And you see what Ty Washington's doing right now at Kentucky. Yeah. He's sharpened that saw by the schedule they played at AZ Compass and defensively, and they played Montverde 3 times. And so I think that's the collision course that we're heading on right now, is those 2 teams going to meet in the end for the championship. But as far as my opinion, and we've talked about that, I didn't feel fair about saying Montverde wasn't until I saw him in person. Now that I have, I think AZ Compass is the best team. And I know that's a broken record. I know you've heard it a million times here on the show, but every time I watch them, the more convicted I am about that statement, because of their depth, because of their defensive intensity, and because of their interchangeability at the star power. And I haven't even talked about Mookie Cook and the jump that he's making. Yeah. Guys like, he's he's in a good space right now for the class of 2023 overall top spot. A lot of guys contending for that spot. So to me, I think it's the easy answer that our guys right down the road from us here at HoopSeen West headquarters are the number 1 team in the country still. And I've been saying that for how long now?
That's what I was just going to ask you. Like, do you still tell them that's the number 1 team in the country? That's what I was just going to ask you.
I do. I know they have a loss, so I'm sure there's a team in Texas right now going, "Hey, you idiot." Whatever.
You know they'll be in your DMs and your mentions, man.
Oh, believe me. Yeah. Believe me.
All right. Best version of he is who he thought he was, or he is who we thought he was. Sorry. Who was that player that, okay, yeah, we know this guy, but yep, he showed us that he is still that guy.
Yeah, Darius Whitehead, man. Darius Whitehead, top 5 guy going to Duke, top 4 guy really going to Duke. He's bigger. I think he's stronger. And the thing that's impressive to me about Darius Whitehead is he's been at Montverde for, a lot of times Montverde gets a player for 1 or 2 years. Darius's been there for really the totality of his high school career. Yeah. And he's had to shift his role. We talked about this during the signing day videos that we did about how he's being able to be a really good role player, but now this is his car. Okay. He's got the keys to it. And let me tell you, he likes to drive fast. He likes to drive aggressively. He loves going around the turns to see how tight the car can handle. Yeah. Because when the moment shows up, if you need to trust somebody, Darius Whitehead's that dude. There were moments where he reminded me a lot of when Gerald Henderson was coming up as a prep. He was one of to me, the best stretch of high school basketball I've ever covered coming out of Philadelphia. Gerald Henderson, before he went to Duke, was really similar to what Darius Whitehead is. Super big, super aggressive, really athletic guy that can attack the basket that you just cannot guard. Darius Whitehead has become that player. However, I think his perimeter game is way better than what Gerald Henderson's was, and overall is a better prospect. But there's a familiarity there that when Gerald was coming out, when I covered him, that we see that with Darius. And Darius is defensively really, really impressive. And there's a killer attitude to him that when you look at this Duke team next year, I think they're going to embody that sort of physical aggressiveness. That, man, if I'm in the ACC, like, I'm like, where are the Tums? Because, like, I'm getting heartburn thinking about how do you stop that dude, because Darius Whitehead will rip your freaking heart out. That guy's good, man. That guy's really freaking good.
Wow. Well, John Shirey definitely gets some ammo heading into next year. You know, hey, just here's some extra ammo just in case you need it. It's Duke, but you get arguably one of the best point guards in the country, and Darius Whitehead, and obviously his performance had a great impression on you. It'd be
his explosion, like his explosion going both right or left was like, man, like it was like, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, it was NBA level, right? Like there's a power, that first step, you're like, oh my gosh, forget about it. Like even the best defenders couldn't really contend it. I mean, there's an explosiveness to him that maybe I never really credited him for, that like really kind of took my breath away, to be quite honest with you. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, man, big ups to Darius for that. We'll be following along for sure as the season continues to go. Him and Mount Vernon Academy obviously will be having a very battle-tested schedule. We'll keep our eyes on them down the road. Let's keep moving. Let's show some unsigned seniors some love, JY. Which unsigned senior cards are on?
Okay, so there's a lot of unsigned seniors from this event that I'm really excited about. And, you know, that's something I always keep my eyes on. Once we pass the early signing period, I think the recruiting calendar almost gets reset, because schools have either aggressively recruited players who never made up their mind and say, you know, like, you know what, we're going to move on. We're going to look for some new players. Your roster starts to change. You've got guys in your collegiate roster that now maybe want to go somewhere else, or maybe they aren't the player that you thought they were. So now you're recalculating what your needs are going to be. So everything kind of gets thrown back in the blender. You hit the on button, you mix it all up, and you start all over again. I think that's going to bode really well for Garrison Phelps here out of Phoenix, out of St. Mary's. I thought he was absolutely tremendous, and really one of the best games of the weekend against Brophy Prep. So St. Mary's and Brophy Prep, to me, is, well, not to me, but historically is one of the best rivalries there is in really the West. They're two of the best programs in Arizona, two of the oldest programs in the city of Phoenix, and two of the programs that have continually produced the most amount of college level players in all sports, really. And Garrison Phelps stepped up even in defeat. I thought he was brilliant. I think he had like 27 points. Looked really, really good as a three-point shooter. And really, we know athletically, he's a guy, to me, and I say this not biased, but complimentary. Like, he looks like a player that's from Florida or Georgia, just his physicalness and his explosiveness, something that you see out of a Deep South type of prospect where he attacks the rim with fervor. You're like, crap, I don't want to, you go ahead and dunk it. I don't want to get in your way. It actually made me think about this. And so I tweeted it out. Forgive me for looking at my phone a lot in this show, but I do think there's some parts of it that are relevant. It actually triggered me thinking about Garrison Phelps this morning. I wrote, we're at an interesting place in high school basketball recruiting. The questions, especially now that the early signing period is over, are, is this player better than those we find or will be in the transfer portal? Can he physically, mentally play right away? And what value does he add immediately? Mm-hmm. And so what we're finding is that there's fewer and fewer high school prospects that are priorities for college programs, because college coaches, in my conversations with them, are saying they're finding better players in the transfer portal. While I understand the theory, I don't necessarily agree that high school players are secondary in talent to those that are in the portal, because I think Garrison Phelps is a perfect example of that. So let me kind of round this out. I think he's athletically enough, can step in. I think strong enough, he can play right away and handle the physicality of it. And I think his three-point shot is good enough and continues to get better that he can add value. Where I'm looking at a guy like Garrison Phelps, and I'm like, why isn't he a bigger priority than a guy in the transfer portal? Because I think Garrison Phelps checks more boxes than guys that are retread players at the collegiate level. So all that being said, I think Garrison Phelps, to me, is one of the most recruitable players in the class of 2022 nationally at the wing position. And he justified that thought with his play at the HoopHall Classic. That's a long answer to your question, but I feel like I needed to articulate all of that to really explain my point on Garrison Phelps and how good he was.
Well, Garrison, again, his performance impressed you. And if you're saying it's giving him the stamp of approval, then it's obviously it's validated. But one thing too, Jay, why that you mentioned, I agree with you. I think there are high school players that can come in and play right away and contribute somewhat meaningful minutes. I'm always intrigued to hear that debate because we go off and on so many times about, hey, you go into the transfer portal or do you get high school talent? I think it's tricky, man. What are your thoughts on that again? It's a slippery slope.
It is. I mean, I think it depends on your program and what you currently have in it. And like college coaches know their locker room better than anybody and what will work and what won't work. Maybe you need somebody that's been in another place. Sometimes, like we hire a lot of people, and sometimes like at the moment, we need somebody that has a different sort of skill set than maybe what everybody else on the outside may think that we need. And so to me, it's like you look at your locker room and say, you know what, maybe we need a guy that's been, in the postseason, maybe at a lower level per se, or maybe at a higher level that can help us in our locker room get better in that category that we've got to get better at. Like I understand that dynamic. And so you're looking at like what can be done, or maybe it's like a personal relationship where you're in a relationship with somebody that maybe you didn't find that you had that value the first time, which makes you help you recognize what you needed in the second go round. And so I think that's part of it. But I think sometimes I hear this a lot from college guys. Oh, well, we're going to go to the portal and, he played 13 minutes a game in the ACC. Okay, well, maybe this guy at the high school level, if he was a freshman, he'd play 20 minutes. So would he be more valuable in that same sort of theory?
Right.
I think sometimes because the guys that have played collegiately already are perceived to be better prospects, and I don't think that that's always true. In fact, I would argue that we have, well, I was going to throw out a number, but I don't know if I feel comfortable in that. I think players have more immediate impact value than they're given credit for coming out of high school, because you see that all the time. If you look at some of the best players in college basketball that are blow up guys, I think you could argue that they're second semester senior risers in high school. And I think those players in years past, like look at a guy like Devin Vassell, who's with the San Antonio Spurs. I was watching him the other day on film. And I was talking to a friend of mine in the NBA, and we were talking about Devin because he went to Peachtree Ridge. He grew up right down the road from us at Swanee Sports Academy. And like, oh, you saw him a lot. I'm like, I did. I didn't think he'd be an NBA player. But that just goes to show the trajectory that he's on. And we really saw that if you go back and look at the second semester of his senior season, that's where you saw like his growth was already going upward, but that's where it like shot off the charts. And you're like, oh, that's where it was. And so if there's so many players like that, maybe Garrison Phelps is that guy. The second semester of a senior season, to me, is really where you find the guys that may be more valuable as a freshman rather than a 20-year-old sophomore transfer at the college level. So that's kind of my point. And I always put myself in this position. Like if I'm a college coach, what would I want to go get? And I don't know. That's why I can understand the predicament. And again, it would depend on the position and depend on the player, but I would probably not discount the high school player as I perceive them to be right now.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one, man. I mean, that's when you could have a podcast for 3 days on, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's take it. Let's dissect it even further. Okay. So if you needed a post player, if you needed a 5-man or a 4-man, I probably would lean on the transfer.
Yep.
Because he just got grown man strength. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a mental toughness there that maybe he's been able to thicken that up a little bit through some experience at the collegiate level. Right. Now, if I need a shooter, I don't care if he's 18 years old or 22 years old. Can you get that ball to go through that cylinder? I don't care. Can you get open? Can you get a shot off? So, I mean, I think that's part of the thought process, right, of how it goes into it. Every situation is obviously different. My whole argument is that we maybe have more players at the high school level that have more value that can contribute right away than maybe they get credit for. Maybe that's my argument.
No, indeed. I agree 1,000. I agree with that 1,000%, because again, there's some guys out there that can flat out go at the high school level, and it just kind of sucks because it's like that sometimes it's a perceived notion of transfer portal, where you're missing out on a key prospect that can really come and make an impact at your program. You can do a little bit more homework and I think a little bit more research, and you can find out who that guy would be for your corresponding program.
Sure.
Let's keep it rolling. Last but not least, let's talk about who got next, man. I love talking about the players that have that take that chance that are younger to get on your radar and then make an immediate impact. But tell us about the best next up, JY. Who'd you like?
That's a great question, because I usually don't. Anyways, Coop Pete from Perry High School, 2025, at the Footprint Center, downtown Phoenix, where the Phoenix Suns play. I go to a ton of Suns games, right? And I'm there all the time. It's always fun to see like which high school kids you see walking through. And, I've seen Dylan Anderson, who's going to Arizona. His high school teammate is Coop Pete. Arguably, I don't know all the freshmen in the country. I'm not really sure that matters right now. But I think Coop Pete's one of the best that I've seen. And I've seen him walking around there as a spectator, watching the Suns, watching guys like, Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Jay Crowder. Well, on the flip side, they're at the game on Saturday night watching Coop Pete play against Bronny James and Sierra Canyon. Wow. And I think they saw a guy that's going to be really freaking good, like really, really good. Yeah. Coop Pete, I thought, played really well for Perry High School, even in defeat against Sierra Canyon. But he looked like he was a guy that – I was talking to somebody right before we started recording the show today. Here's what I like about Coop Pete. He does his job in a way that we saw – like, here's why I love Evan Mobley so much. Evan Mobley just did his job, never was high, never was low. Derek Favors was the same way, coming up out of high school, just did his job, steady, always reliable. Coop Pete, I think, is that same sort of player, non-emotional, really mechanical in a very good way, and does his job in a way that you're like, oh crap, this dude, can you imagine? He's 14 years old. Can you imagine this kid when he's 18 years old doing what he does? Really impressive young player. And I think it's so hard to come into high school with a huge reputation and not get beaten down by it. We've seen that happen so many times. Like, that's so hard. That spotlight will burn a hole through your soul if you let it. Yeah. And I think Coop Pete, so far, first semester in, we're like, okay, this guy's got the bones about him that understands maybe the rigors of being such a player, doesn't let it get to him. That's a credit to his coaches and his parents. So Coop Pete, to me, it looked like a guy that we'll be talking about for a really long time as a really productive player. And then Bryson Tiller out of Pace Academy. I watched him. I got really sick. I got really ill. So I was really upset that I couldn't go out there and physically be there for the games on Friday and Saturday. So I had to watch everything on a screen. So I didn't get to see our buddy Sharman White with Pace Academy, but I tell you what I did see was what we saw at the elite preview camp out of Bryson Tiller. That's a 6'8" young man that's going to be really, really special. We've seen so many guys come out of the city of Atlanta at a young age, and we talk about this trajectory and how do you keep up. Like, do you remember Bryson from the preview camp?
I do. Incredible performance, man. Tough to guard.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You see it the minute you see him. You're like, oh, that's the kid that's going to be really good. So I get really excited about where Bryson Tiller is going to be as a senior under that tutelage of Coach White. And we've seen what Matthew Cleveland developed into. We've seen what so many players, during Coach White's time at Miller Grove, developed into. So Bryson Tiller, to me, is a guy that certainly caught our attention. A lot of people out back on the, here on the West Coast saw him for the first time and got really excited about him too. So I think Bryson Tiller right now has to keep stacking those good days up and continue that trajectory. But man, a lot to get excited about with Bryson Tiller for sure.
Oh, well, there you have it, man. Two key young guys to keep an eye on. Overall, JY, it seems like the HoopHall Classic West was a phenomenal event, man. And I always
very valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, very valuable. I mean, there's great film to go back and rewatch. You're going to do that. And man, we're back at it again, bro. We're back at it. We'll be at all over the place. I was thinking about, I'll be in Las Vegas. I'm leaving this week to be there for the Tarkanian Classic. Nice. Brianna Patton will be at the City of Palms. Our guy, Justin Byerly, and Josh Tech, to Cortland Christian, our whole team. We're going to be everywhere once again, right here before the Christmas holiday season. So much to see. In fact, if you're watching this, not only like and subscribe this video on YouTube, but let us know where you're going. Like, tell us where you're going to be at. Tag us on HoopSeen on Twitter and Instagram. We'd love to see what you're watching. Give us a tip to who we need to keep our eyes on. That helps us out tremendously. I know you get tips. I get tips. Our whole staff get tips. And we chase them down. We really do. We want to see who these next players and prospects are. So that helps us out quite a bit.
Yeah, a bunch of events coming up, man, during the holiday season. It's always a dope time of the year. Make sure you're staying tuned on hoopseen.com, hoopseen.com/news. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at HoopSeen, on Instagram at HoopSeen, and then get in contact with our local accounts as well for South Carolina, Florida, Alabama. So much content for you, man. So many great games that are coming up, and you don't want to miss a beat. I'm excited. That's all I can say, man. I'm excited. I love this time of year.
I know, it's awesome. Can I throw one more thing in here at the end?
Sure. Yep, for sure.
Okay, so Mike, Eddie, and I, we went out to the new facility that we're going to be running the Cactus Classic and HoopSeen West tournament here at the end of March. Austin, if you're a program back east, you need to come out here to Phoenix and play at Legacy Sports Park. It is Disneyland on steroids. I mean, truly. And so to have our events in this facility is going to be off the charts. And so if you're looking for a program, or if you're looking for an event, for your program to come in and like have a trip for, look at that one. If you can't get to Phoenix on that date, come out to Las Vegas for the All-In Invitational the 1st of May. So we've got some big events back here in the West that if you're a team on the East Coast that's looking for a getaway trip, lock one of those in, because trust me, you're going to want to come compete, especially for these teams that we've talked about so many times here on the Just a Minute show from the West Coast. It's a nice competitive balance for your program. But I'm telling you, Austin, we got to get you out here, bro. We got to get you out here and see this.
You got me excited, man. That's gonna be crazy. If Legacy Sports Park has you giving it that stamp of approval, like I got to get there. Like that's just
you got to get there. Yeah, HoopSeen Association teams, you got to get here. Teams that are looking to compete on a high level on a big stage, you got to get here. So excited. We'll talk more about it coming up, but I got to get that shout in before the year's over for sure.
Glad you did. Hey, you all can go ahead and register. Coaches, register your teams on hoopseen.com/events. Registration is open, man. Let's get this ball rolling. We want to see your teams in 2022 at those events, and our full schedule we've got on the HoopSeen slate for next season. All right, that wraps it up for episode number 29 of Just a Minute. As always, I'm your HoopSeen host, Austin Smith, joined each and every time by my partner in crime, our editor-in-chief here at HoopSeen.com, Justin Young. Thank you all for tuning in. Give us a shout on Twitter. Give us a shout on Instagram. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Just a Minute.